Call to order the Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, May 17th, 2018. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Harlick, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Commissioner Stevens.
Here.
Commissioner Knobloch.
Here.
Commissioner Heikkila.
Here.
Commissioner Casey.
Here.
And Chair Schwartz.
Here.
Let the record show that Commissioner Schmalke and Stevenson are not at the meeting tonight.
Our first order of business is to adopt our agenda.
Chair Schwartz, I move that we adopt the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Knobloch and second by Casey. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have the approval of our minutes of our April 19th meeting.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the minutes from the April 19th minutes meeting, all 11 minutes of them.
Second.
Motion by Casey, second by Heikkila. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Motion carries with Commissioner Knobloch abstained. Our first order of business is planning case 17-41, an ordinance amendment to require an inspection prior to tree removal in the Mississippi River Critical Corridor area. Mr. Harlicker.
Yeah, Commissioners, what is being proposed tonight is a revamped ordinance from what the Commission saw several months ago. We consulted with the city forester on this and came back with the ordinance that you're considering tonight. What it does, it tightens up the regulations regarding tree removal in the Mississippi River Critical Corridor area. We've had a couple cases last fall, whereas property owners came in and cut down trees along the river. The current code prohibits clear cutting and does allow the removal of selective cutting of trees greater than 4 inches. However, there is a provision in there that allows for the removal of damaged trees and diseased trees without any approval by the city. And what happens is the trees are removed, and because the property owners and the landscape people felt they were diseased and damaged and warrant removal. And once that's done, there's no way to verify the condition of those trees. And what the proposed ordinance does, it will require city approval. There's no permit that's required, but city staff inspection, including the city forester, to go out and verify the condition of trees prior to removal. What's being proposed is reducing the minimum size from 4 inches to 3 inches. That was based on discussions with the city forester and the determination that 3-inch trees warrant preservation as much as 4-inch trees do. So that's where the 3 inches came from. And the new ordinance requires city staff inspection and approval of the removal of any trees 3 inches and greater in size, whether it's selective cutting or whether they're diseased and damaged. The code also is a reformatting of the section. What we did is took some of the language that was actually specified as standards in the current code and incorporated them into kind of an introductory paragraph. For instance, under the current ordinance, it talks about cutting of trees is acceptable when appropriately spaced and staged to maintain a continuous natural cover. That was a criteria under the current code, and we're incorporating that into an introduction to this section, as well as where the standards apply. Currently, the standards apply to within 40 feet of creeks and riverbanks, the slope or face of bluffs, and within 40 feet of the bluff lines. That language there was also incorporated into a introductory language in this section. Staff also added language that the ordinance applies to land within 100 feet of the ordinary high water of the river. And in practical terms, what this does is it limits the applicability of this ordinance to properties along the river and those probably up along Coon Creek. That's the area where these conditions exist. The ordinance also currently it keeps the clear cutting of trees not be prohibited. And here's the significant language changes in standard B. The director may authorize selective cutting of trees greater than 3 inches in diameter, the removal of diseased or damaged trees, and vegetation removal required for the development of permitted uses. Removal of trees less than 3 inches do not require city approval. The fourth standard is the same as the existing language. Existing and planned vegetation shall be considered in structure siting and design. The development of new and reconstruction of existing structures shall be accomplished so as to minimize the need for tree removal. And the last standard is the applicant shall demonstrate that all grading which takes place will be conducted so as to preserve root zone aeration and stability of trees and provide an adequate watering area equal to at least 1/2 the tree's crown cover. And with that, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission move to approve the proposed ordinance. And I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Harlicker. Commissioner, any questions for Mr. Harlicker?
Yes, I have one.
Commissioner Stevens.
3B, when it says the selective cutting of trees greater than 4 inches, should that read 3 inches now, or not?
It will be 3 inches
Okay, I mean.
under the draft ordinance. Right now, under the current code, it's 4 inches.
Okay,
Under the proposed language reduces it down to 3 inches.
because it's introduced in June, but it's not underlined. Like you're trying to change it like you are down below, so I just wanted to know.
Yeah,
Up in 3B. 3B,
On the proposed ordinance,
okay. The one that we have a draft of it, of this one, the ordinance with no number,
right,
okay. But like before, you have everything double highlighted what you're going to change, but up above, it still says 4 inches, so I didn't know if you were gonna underline to be 3
no,
inches.
the way it's structured, in ordinance format, the language that's deleted is in brackets. So if you notice right before
Okay.
the parentheses 3, there's a bracket there, as
Okay.
well as the last.
Oh, okay, so the whole thing is.
The whole thing is being replaced with the underlined language beneath it.
Okay, all right. I didn't see the bracket on,
Okay.
by number 3.
Yep.
So I saw it at the bottom.
It's easy to miss.
But yes, okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
Commissioner Knobloch.
I have a quick two-part question to Mr. Harlicker. The first part is, it's nice to see the ordinance, the amendments, cleaning up of them, which is always good. My first part of the question is, what is the anticipated communication to residents of the critical corridor area?
That hasn't been set up yet.
Okay.
I assume language will probably be on the city's website, as well as going out in probably the city's newsletter.
Newsletter, okay. And then my second part is the, kind of ties right into it, but is the code enforcement without people having the knowledge of the communication of the amendment, what is the anticipated penalties or enforcement for those who choose not to be knowledgeable or to not follow the ordinance?
I'm looking for the attorney with help on this. I anticipate probably a administrative citation process.
That would be my expectation.
Okay, good. All right, that's it.
Commissioner, any other questions right now?
That was my question too, was about how it would be enforced. And
All right, we do need a public hearing on this, so at this time I will open a public hearing in planning case 17-41, ordinance amendment to require inspection prior tree removal in the Mississippi River Critical Corridor area. Anyone present wish to speak to this issue tonight? Seeing no one wishing to speak, we'll close the public hearing. Commission, are we ready for action?
Yes, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to get back to where. I
Commissioner
need to be.
Stevens.
And here it is. In planning case 17-41, I move that we approve the ordinance amendment to require an inspection of prior to tree removal in the Mississippi River Critical Corridor area, and for the recommendation of the plan, it's going to the city council, right? For that, okay.
I'll second.
Motion by Stevens, second by Knobloch. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. This is a recommendation by the Planning Commission and will be introduced by the City Council at their June 5th meeting. Next order of business, Planning Case 18-6, an ordinance amendment to modify the requirement for attaching accessory structures to adjacent other structures. Mr. Harlicker.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Schwartz and Commissioners. Staff is proposing an amendment to the accessory structure language so that it is consistent with the current building code standards. One of the things we strive to do is bring consistency, especially with accessory structures, between the building code and zoning code so they mesh well together. The current language reads, an accessory structure larger than 120 square feet of floor area so located such that any of its walls is within 5 feet of a wall of any other structure must be attached to and made structurally part of the other structure. At the time that language was implemented, it was consistent with the building code. Since then, the building code has been updated and amended, and this requirement was stricken. It's no longer in the building code regulations. The reason being that building code, the standards have changed, technology has changed, the standards for openings and doors and windows has changed, and to reflect those changes, the building code was revised to take that provision out. And what city staff is proposing is to take that same language out of our ordinance so it's still consistent with the building code. The other housekeeping language is to section 11-1207. That language calls for concrete slabs under structures. If you recall, earlier this year, we amended the ordinance to eliminate that requirement for structures under 120 square feet or larger, and changed it so it would apply to structures 200 square feet, which is consistent with the building code. Staff missed this section. It was in section 1207, which is the general standard section of the zoning code. So in order to bring consistency between that and the single-family residential section, we're also incorporating that proposed change along with this ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Harlicker. Commission, any questions for Mr. Harlicker? All right, I have a public hearing on this matter. At this time, I will open a public hearing in planning case 18-6, an ordinance amendment to require, or excuse me, to modify the requirement for attaching accessory structures to adjacent other structures. Anyone wish to speak to this matter? Seeing no one wishing to speak, we will close the public hearing. And Commission,
Well, in planning case 18-6, I move that the commission recommend approval of the proposed ordinance amendment regarding the accessory structures.
Second.
motion by Stephen, second by Casey. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. This is a recommendation by the Planning Commission and will be introduced by the City Council at their June 5th meeting. Next, we have Planning Case 18-7, a site plan for a medical office building at 11600 block of Round Lake Boulevard. Wilkes Architects. Mr. Herlicker.
Yes, Chair Schwartz and Commissioners, this item is, there we go. It's a site plan for a medical office building located near the intersection of Round Lake Boulevard, which is here, and Coon Rapids Boulevard. There's existing office building in front here and a small retail center at this corner. And then you've got townhouses to the north and an apartment building over here. The applicant is proposing to construct a 20,540 square foot medical office building. They're also requesting design flexibility for the floor to area ratio, the requirement that the building entrance face the primary street, and the percent of ground floor windows facing the primary street. The site is 2.38 acres in size. Here's the site plan. For parking, with a medical office building, 68 spaces are required. Total parking for the site is, as proposed, is 121 spaces. The building does meet the setback requirements from the property lines. The building from the north, it's 59 feet to the property line. From Round Lake Boulevard, it's 135 feet. And from the south property line, it's 50 feet. The site is located in Port Wellness, and it's also within the River Rapids Overlay District. Staff compared the plans to the requirements required for site plan review. Found that the property or the development is compatible with the adjacent land uses. It will be preserving existing natural features. There's a stand of trees out in this area here that'll be preserved. There's also some existing landscaping, some shrubs along Round Lake Boulevard that will preserve where possible. There might be some grading associated with the pond that will necessitate their removal, but otherwise they'll try to preserve those as possible. It's got a safe and efficient circulation system. There's access around the building for both regular vehicles as well as emergency vehicles are able to get around the building. There's two access points into the site, one here, and then a shared access to the south, right here. This is an existing access that goes in here. The one up here is new. Round Lake Boulevard has sufficient capacity to accommodate the traffic generated by this project. It conforms to the city's plans for sidewalks and walkways. There is an existing sidewalk along Round Lake Boulevard that'll be preserved. There are no other improvements required. The proposal is consistent with the master plan for Port Wellness and the land use designation of commercial mixed use. There is an internal sidewalk system. You can see these kind of dark dash areas are the sidewalks. So they've got access to the main door here. There's also access at the west end of the building, as well as the east end, bringing everything to the main entrance here. As you can see from here, there's also a connection from Round Lake Boulevard up into the site and then to the main entrance right here. Landscaping. This is the proposed landscape plan. It does meet the city's criteria for landscaping. The one additional, and it's a condition of staff's recommendation, is that foundation plantings be extended along here, east of the main entrance, and kind of wrap around the corner. This is really the focal point of the building, and the area around the base of it should be landscaped. Along the north property line here, the black circles are spruce trees, Black Hill spruce, I believe, and then the circles, that whole line of spruce is interspersed with, excuse me, maple trees. They've got the same mix down along this end of the parking lot. And along Round Lake Boulevard, they've got street trees, which are maples. And then they've got a line of birch trees here between the existing, this is an existing stormwater pond, between the pond and the parking lot here. These are landscaped islands in the parking lot that have trees on them, as well as this area here and across the front. So the site is well landscaped. The project should not create any disturbances to the surrounding properties. And looking at the River Rapids overlay standards, building is 2 stories. There are changes in the materials and colors to distinguish between them. That shows up here. This is the south elevation, and this is the elevation that faces Round Lake Boulevard. This is a cultured stone, and this other material here is a fiber cement siding, so you've got changes in color as well as texture there and here. And if you look at these are the north elevation. That same pattern is carried all around on the north side, and this is the west end of the building that faces that wooded area. The building height is staggered. As you can see, you've got the bump out here with the stone tower on the southeast corner. Then the mix of materials highlight the separation between the north, or between the second and first floors. Again, break up in the roof line. The stone tower on the southeast breaks up that flat roof line and provides a vertical change. Building materials. It doesn't meet the city code. You've got a mix that's carried around the building, and the side that faces Round Lake Boulevard, which is considered the primary street, must be at least 30% stone, and the proposed elevation that faces Round Lake Boulevard does meet that requirement. Outdoor spaces, they've got a proposed seating area at the west end, as well as in front of the main entrance. The furniture that they'll be locating at those 2 places should be consistent, so you don't have a bunch of random furniture in the outdoor spaces. The parking, as you can see from the site plan, the bulk of the parking is on the side and rear of the building, away from Round Lake Boulevard. There is a single row of parking here between the building and Round Lake Boulevard, which the code does allow. Pedestrian and bicycle access, as stated earlier, we do have the internal sidewalk connections that brings people in from Round Lake Boulevard and then around the building. Urban design and other amenities, again, there should be trash receptacles at the entrance here and the outdoor seating area here, as well as on the west end. A bike rack should also be provided near the main entrance of the building. Lighting, no accent lighting is proposed for the building. We did talk about the landscaping and signage. There's no freestanding sign shown on the site plan. The signage shown on the building elevations are for reference only. Signage will require separate sign permits. And shared parking. Back when this office building was constructed, this was approved in 2004, and then their site plan was reaffirmed in 2006 because it has lapsed. There was a concept plan for this site that showed a different configuration from what's being proposed now, and there was shared parking between the two sites. So when this site was developed, a part of the drive aisle was extended onto this site. At the time, this whole area here was under one ownership. Now, 12 years later, situation and conditions have changed. You've got different ownership of these lots, and to accommodate that encroachment and allow the property to the south to maintain their 24-foot wide drive aisle, there'll be a shared access agreement between this property and this property here. That agreement does allow for parking encroachments, and that's allowed in the port language. That agreement executed between the two property owners will be reviewed by City Attorney's Office for content and structure. And if you can see on this, I don't know if it shows up very well, but this detail down here, their parking lot does comply with the 5-foot setback requirement. And what they've done is they've got their concrete curb line here. Then there's a space along here, and then they'll replace the existing bituminous curb with concrete curb. So you'll have the concrete curb, about a foot of space, and then you'll have the concrete curb that provides the edge for the drive aisle for the building to the south. The other, there's 3 other items that need to be brought up. Design flexibility is being proposed and in 3 areas. The first one is floor to area ratio. City code requires a floor to area ratio of 0.6. What's being proposed is a floor to area ratio of 0.2. Staff is recommending, the commission recommend approval of the 0.2 ratio. A 0.6 floor to area ratio would require a 62,200 square foot building on this site and the associated 207 parking spaces. And design flexibility is warranted because it'd be difficult to accommodate that level of density on this project. A 0.2 floor to area ratio will allow for development at an intensity that's more suitable for this site. The other item is the front of the building facing Round Lake Boulevard. Code requires that the main entrance to the building face the primary street, which in this case is Round Lake Boulevard. The applicant may substitute a focal feature for the main entrance when it's not feasible. And What the applicant is proposing is this cultured stone tower on the southeast corner. This is the main entrance here that actually faces to the south. It's indented into the building with a large glass on the second floor and then surrounded by glass on the first floor. The reason being is trying to put this building so it faces Round Lake Boulevard would really prohibit circulation around the building. The existing pond, which has to stay there because it provides stormwater management for this site as well as the two existing buildings to the south. All the stormwater flows into that pond, so there isn't the ability to modify that to somehow push the building up closer to Round Lake Boulevard. And like stated earlier, to mitigate this impact, the applicant is proposing this tower feature on the southeast corner, which is really becomes the focal feature and is visible from the Coon Rapids Boulevard, Round Lake Boulevard intersection. The other area where the applicant is requesting design flexibility is the requirement that 60% of the wall facing Round Lake Boulevard must be transparent between the height of 3 to 8 feet above grade. What they are proposing is 40%, and the reason for that is really three reasons. The first one, this is really different from a general office or a retail use, which that code was essentially geared for. Because this is a medical office building, there's a certain level of privacy that's required for the patients in the rooms that face this way. And the placement of these windows allows for that privacy and still allows light into the building. The second reason is there is, in this area here, this is where the utilities come into the building, and there's utility boxes on the walls that limit the placement of windows, as well as the placement of structural supports along here that also limit where windows can go. One of the ways that this impact is being mitigated is on the site plan and the landscape plan. As you can see, the building is set back quite a distance from Round Lake Boulevard. It's separated by the pond, the row of street trees, and then the birch trees here. So the landscaping features here really soften this view of the building from Round Lake Boulevard. This illustration here, this photo, is a picture of the building that the applicant recently built in Otsego. What this is included is because they're using the same type of materials on this building as what's being proposed on this. So this provides kind of a real-life view of what the building will look like. The difference, significant difference being, is this feature here actually goes on this corner and then wraps around the building, as opposed to being in the center of the building. We've also included, the applicant provided some perspectives from how it will look from different vantage points. And what this does, this is a perspective from Coon Rapids Boulevard. And as you can see, when you're at this intersection, look across, and you'll be able to see this southeast corner with the tower accent feature right here. With that, staff is recommending approval of the proposed site plan, or with the conditions as follows. Compliance with Title 11 land use regulations. All engineering comments be addressed. Site security agreement be executed. All signs require separate permits and are not approved as part of the site plan approval. A shared access agreement must be executed and approved by the city attorney for form and content. All landscaped areas must be irrigated. Foundation plantings be included along the south wall, east of the front entrance, and continue around the corner of the east side. Parking lot lights will have shields and cutoffs, so that lights directed away from adjacent properties, and the lighting plan will comply with city code. The design of the outdoor furniture should be consistent between both seating areas. Trash receptacles be provided near the seating areas, and a bike rack provided at the front entrance. The existing bituminous curb along the existing drive aisle will be improved to concrete curb and gutter, and the existing shrubs around Round Lake Boulevard be preserved and incorporated into the landscape design where possible. And the findings for granting flexibility for the floor to area ratio. Design flexibility is warranted because the site cannot accommodate density required to reach the 0.6, and the 0.2 floor to area ratio will allow for development at an intensity suitable for the site. Entrance facing the primary street, the configuration of the site and the existing stormwater pond limit the layout of the site and placement of the entrance so that it faces Round Lake Boulevard. To mitigate that, the applicant is proposing to substitute a stone tower as a focal feature, and the stone tower will be visible from the intersection of Round Lake Boulevard and Coon Rapids Boulevard. And the third request, percent of ground floor transparency. The applicant acknowledges the need for natural light and windows, but the need to balance that for patient privacy. Sections along the east wall include wall-mounted utility spaces and structural supports that limit the placement of windows. And to mitigate that, the building itself is set back about 135 feet from Round Lake Boulevard. The area between the building and the street includes a stormwater pond and landscaping consisting of maple street trees along Round Lake Boulevard and a row of birch trees between the pond and the parking lot. And if that'll answer questions, and representatives, the applicant is in the audience also.
Thank you, Mr. Harlicker. I have a question on the parking. Could you pull back to the picture that shows the adjacent property parking lot as well? Yes. Can you zoom in on that at all?
I cannot.
Okay. The drive aisle that's on the north end of that row of parked cars?
Yep.
Yes, right there. The bituminous curb that's there now and will be changed to a concrete curb, is that where the black line is? Or is that gonna be 24 feet from the back of that parking stalls?
The 24 feet, the curb line actually is north of that property line, a couple feet. The distance from the back of these parking stalls to the existing bituminous curb line is 24 feet, which is the minimum required for two-way or for two-way traffic.
So there's gonna be the double row of parking on the existing lot, 24 feet of drive aisle, and then the concrete curb, and then
And then another row of
then a
parking.
single row of cars.
Yep.
All right. That was my question. Commission, any other questions for Mr. Harlicker at this
Chair
time?
Schwartz, I have two general questions.
Commissioner Knobloch.
The one entrance, if I'm correct, from Round Lake Boulevard, the single driveway on the northeast,
This access
Yeah.
here?
that's the only access at the moment, as per the site plan?
Well, there's two access points.
Oh, there are?
There's an existing one here, right here. That's the shared access for all, that'll be a shared access for all three buildings. The new access is going in up about here, and that'll be for the proposed building.
Okay. The second part is Is there an ETA on the shared access arrangement between the two properties? The one with the one directly to the south that we were just talking to with Chair Schwartz?
Yeah, not at this point, that agreement is being worked out. That's why it was a condition of approval.
One last addition, but is that in the southeast corner that you referred to as isn't that a pedestrian pathway? Is that right beside the shared access road?
Right, that sidewalk will be between the curb line of the existing driveway and the drainage pond.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner, any other questions?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Casey?
Mr. Harlicker, is this a one-tenant occupancy building? There's just going to be one medical practice?
Yes, Commissioner Casey, that's correct.
Okay. It's a nice look. I think the building has some nice features with it.
All right, before we have the public hearing, is anything the petitioner would like to add? I see they've got some sample materials. Perhaps you can cover that information before we have the public hearing, please. Go up to the microphone, please, state your name and give your address for the record, please.
Hello, my name's Kevin. I'm with Wilkes Architects. I
Kevin,
did bring
last name?
green, like the color.
All right, thank you.
I did bring some samples here of the proposed materials. So where would you like me to set these? Like this is the cultured stone Scott was referring to. And then we have actual hand samples here of the proposed fiber cement siding. This beige color is the primary, and then we have an accent panel. It's actually it's called a vintage wood texture, so it has a little bit of texture to it, along with our proposed precast, which pretty much aligns the base of the primary structure up to about 2.5 feet. And then this sample here is the dark bronze accent that primarily makes up the storefront, some of the flashing, and the parapet capping as well.
So the tower itself is going to be,
Correct. It's this stone material here, also referenced in the images on Otsego.
all right.
Can we see them? Can we?
Yeah, sure.
And those pieces, those small pieces are all concrete panels?
Correct. It's a fiber cement
Yeah.
composite panel.
And is there anything else that you would like to add from what Mr. Harlicker stated?
On behalf of Wilkes Architects, just thank you for hearing our application. Peter Nystrom here is also, I'd like to say something about Nystrom and Associates as a company.
Good evening. Yes, I'm Peter Nystrom with Nystrom Associates. Thank you so much for taking the time tonight to hear about us and hopefully grant approval so we can go on to the next steps and break ground sometime soon in Coon Rapids. We've been in Coon Rapids for a few years now, and we actually reside right across the parking lot. If we can go back to the image, the parking lot overlay. So we're actually in that building right there. So we're out of space right now, and that's what we're trying to do, is just obtain more space, which is why we're trying to build this building. And we do a lot of work with all the healthcare systems in the state, specifically a lot with Mercy Hospital, and we work with some of the toughest populations in the medical industry. So moving forward, this project is really going to help serve a need in the community, and actually all the communities around the state. Specifically in Coon Rapids, like I said, we work a lot with Mercy Hospital, with Chief Wise from the Coon Rapids Police Department, who's a good friend of ours, and we just hear over and over, there's such a need for these services. So by being able to move forward, we're going to be able to hire more folks from the city to be able to treat more patients and to really try to stabilize the community in general and from the surrounding area. In some communities, there's a wait list for some of the services that we offer up to 4 months out. And that's just a shame when you think about it. If you're seeking help for treatment and you have to wait up to 4 months, that's just sad. It shouldn't be that way. And our goal is to try to eliminate wait lists and try to get people in as soon as we can to really help treat and serve our communities that we serve, and Coon Rapids is certainly one of them. And so far, we've had a great partnership with the city, and we look forward to a long-term prosperous relationship. So again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Do you plan to continue in the existing building and
No, we would vacate the existing space once the new building is completed.
And I'm sorry, where did you say the existing space was now?
It's in the building to the south.
Oh, okay.
Correct, yep.
but you do not own that building right now?
We do not. I wish we did, then we could have more space right away.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We may have questions for you later on.
Sure, thank you.
All right, at this time, I will open a public hearing in planning case 18-7, a site plan for a medical office building at 1600 block of Round Lake Boulevard, Wilkus Architects. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter? Please come up to the microphone. Give your name and address, please, for the record.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Robidoux. I'm at 11789 Xenia Street in Coon Rapids. So could you go back to the landscape picture? Perfect, thank you. The property to the north was described as townhomes. They are technically single-family homes with an association, and that's where I live. We have another family also here, and their property, their house is actually the one to the right that you see just kind of sticking out down there. So there's two of our buildings, our houses, that are showing right near where this is coming in. And this is the area I'd like to request that the council consider requesting or requiring one minor change or consideration. Those properties, the windows on that side are bedrooms. And what we've added in here, or what they've put in here for this proposal, is a group of trees. Now, the other thing that hasn't really been talked about, at least not that I've heard, you may have in other discussions, that drive that's going right by there, they mentioned emergency vehicles. That's also going to be a primary drive for vehicles, both work and people coming and going, as well as emergency vehicles. They did not say where the trash situation is. Are we going to have trash trucks coming in early mornings? Where is that going to be? They said there would be no lights on the buildings, but they didn't mention light in the parking lots. And all of this is going to be going toward us. The trees eventually would block that, but it's going to take a long time to get to that point. We have trees on our property, and there's one thing about that property. There's about 3 inches of black dirt right below the grass, and then we have sand and clay. Roots don't go down, they go straight out. And they're going to be coming into our property, right in where our irrigation system runs, which is going to be an expense for us. Now, the trees may be okay, and I'm not going to say they have to be gone, but we'd like to request some sort of a privacy wall. Put up a 15-foot wall, block the sound, allow the people that live there to be able to have their windows open or their blinds open, because otherwise they're not going to be able to. Their bedrooms are going to have to be kept closed with what's going to be happening here for their privacy. Putting that fence in there is one option that I would like to request. You're going to take care of some lighting. I've said 15 foot as a sample. You may know better as to what it may be or what would best fit for this. Blocks the light. Deals with emergency vehicles and vehicle traffic in general, because it's going to be used. That entrance is going to be an excellent entrance for that building, and people are going to use it. They're going to use it a lot. Trash trucks in the morning, I've already mentioned, that's going to be coming in, that's going to be sound, that's going to be coming in with it. And you're going to have people in these buildings being able to look at us. So we're requesting that something be considered for that. Again, the trees, that'll work. Eventually, we're gonna have the root problem, and then what people are seeing and what our people are hearing. It is fairly close to their property and one of their families, of course, as well, as you can see on there. So we want to give consideration to that, but the association for us also covers all the landscaping, the irrigation, and everything else, and it affects all of us. So we've talked to some of the neighbors. This is the one thing. We like the idea of having this property developed. No problem with that. I agree with that. The growth for the community, I have no problem with that. I like the medical building idea. No problem with that. We're just requesting the consideration be given to where we are sitting and what will be seen and heard from that side of the building. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to speak at the public hearing? Anyone else wish to speak? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Mr. Harlicker, what is the possibility that a fence could be installed in lieu or in addition to some of the trees?
Yeah, Chair and Commissioners, certainly, you know, there should be enough space in here to put a privacy fence along that property line. I'll let the applicant speak to the timing of the trash pickup. The trash enclosure is located right here. So it faces the office building to the south. Certainly, we can look at having lower light poles. All the lights will be screened so that the light's directed towards the building. They'll have the lights likely along here, and they'll be directed towards the building and away from the homes to the north. There is the city code does limit light spillover at the property line, so it'll have to comply with that. And again, you know, we could require lower light poles. There may be additional light poles needed, but that would help address any spillover onto the adjacent properties.
Thank you. Mr. Robidoux, excuse me, not Mr. Robidoux, Mr. Green, can you folks address the possibility of whether you would consider putting in a screen wall, fence of some sort? And possibly in addition to talk about your trash collection, what time you anticipate trash collection would be in the day, and hours of operation for your building?
Sure, if I may come back.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Can we look at that other overview, aerial view of the current building that's on site? Thank you. So right now, and Mr. Abdu, I do appreciate your concern and your association's concern. Can I move the mouse here real quick? So as we talk about vehicles coming in here, no doubt we will certainly have some vehicles coming in and out of there. However, most of our patients and staff already are accustomed to using the shared entrance already since we've been here for a few years. They're in the habit of coming in this entrance. So I think the majority of people will still come in through that entrance.
Psychological, behavioral.
When we talk about the trash pickup, right now at the existing building that we're currently leasing at, that's the trash enclosure. So from here to, you know, right up here, 120-ish feet, if the sound of a truck backing up, it's not going to change the decibel level that much, in my opinion, from this drive here to that drive here. So I don't think it would really make that big of a difference, if you will, having a trash, a rubbish truck coming in this drive here and creating a lot of noise for the homeowners up in this area. So my concern is, you know, if we go through the work of adding that fence and burdening the costs of it, is it really going to make much difference or impact at the end of the day? And my concern is that in theory it sounds good, but at the end of the day I don't know how much good it will actually do.
Mr. Nystrom, do you have an idea as to the timing is when you expect the trash pickups?
I would expect it to be the same time as the building that we're currently in, because most likely we'll use the same company, and I couldn't speak to what time that is, but you might know better than I do.
5 a.m.
5 a.m.? All the other buildings we own, I've never heard of them coming prior to 7 to 8 a.m. So 5 a.m. is a bit surprising to me, but that very well could be.
Commissioner Casey?
So could you stipulate that the trash has to use the lower access point that's shared? Being as they come in on the south side of the property and access that one trash receptacle on the existing building, and being as the new trash receptacle faces south, or can you stipulate maybe that they use that south entrance and eliminate at least the trash trucks from coming in on that north side? You know, that's just a thought to me. It seems like it aligns better with the trash receptacle placement that opens to the south.
Yeah, that's what he said.
I don't know, that's just my thought, is to keep the noisy truck from being closer to the association homes. And also, how much of a fence would that be for those width of those two houses? Is it 50 feet maybe? I don't see dimensions on the pages I have, but
From the building to the house.
I guess the other thought,
Approximately 300 feet.
300.
to cover the two homes.
To go to the end of the building. And we're 135, approximately 135 feet off of Round Lake Boulevard. And then the building itself is 155 feet in width.
So
So 135 and 155 is 290 feet,
Yeah, he said 300 feet.
so 300 feet.
Chair,
for those two homes, I'm thinking, I guess I don't know, you wouldn't extend it necessarily past
Easy traffic is
those
around Lake
two
Boulevard
homes,
compared to
because you're
what
gonna
Well,
hit
you
the street.
probably
Why
would
would
would extend it at least to the end of the building, I would think.
You wouldn't need to. I mean,
Well-
if that were the case, you're concerned about the two association homes properties, not the proposed building, is my thought.
What type of fencing currently exists between your homes and? Chain link? Between your homes and Round Lake Boulevard?
Between our homes and Round Lake,
Yep.
we have no fence.
No fence between your house and Round Lake Boulevard?
Between our homes and the open property you're building on.
Chain link there. But between your house and a very busy road, Round Lake Boulevard, that would have much larger and noisier vehicles than we would have in our parking lot, no fence.
We're further away from that, and it's not our bedroom windows that are facing it.
Chair Schwartz,
Commissioner Knobloch?
I have a question for Mr. Hardlicker. Now, could you clarify the stage of the proposed of the trees, the 28, it says 28 Black Hill spruce interspersed with 8 maples? Like, I'm inferring the
Planting
size.
size?
Yeah, the size when they'll be planted and a general, because the spruce grow quite rapidly within 2-3 years, don't they?
Yeah, they're fairly rapidly growing trees. The evergreen trees will be 6 to 8 feet,
Okay.
and the overstory trees, the maples, 2.5 inch caliber. That's the minimum size required. They can certainly install larger trees, but those are the minimum requirements.
Okay, those are considerable. And then the interspersed maples, they're the only ones that would have a root system that would grow outwards rather than the spruce are more directly, root systems go south. They don't,
I'd have to take your word on that.
Well, I'm just looking for affirmation.
Yeah, and there are existing evergreen trees on that development's property,
Right there.
right along and through here. So you've got those along with the trees that are proposed as part of this project.
And the reason I bring up this question is because between the existing of this land being barren and the anticipated minimal, relatively minimal client traffic, and then the time frame with the growth of the trees, my recommendation is that I'm seeing a relatively good middle ground versus a potential other property or business going into that, say like a fast food drive-through. But having a medical building in this particular property with the landscape plan that's anticipated, I think it's not ideal, but it's a good option for consideration for the board.
Mr. Nystrom, could you give the board and residents an idea about hours of operation?
Sure. We typically open between 7 and 8 a.m. and we have some folks who work as late as 8 to 9 p.m., but typically the majority of our staff are between 8 and 5, a normal business day, if you will.
And does that mean that patients coming in will be limited to 8 to 4 or whatever?
They're not limited per se, but the majority of them. So we have some folks who might do couples therapy where they can't really come in to see their doctor until the workday is over if they have a job who doesn't allow them to really leave during the day. So they may be in for 6 or 7 in the evening appointment, but that would be maybe 10% of our patients. So I'd say a good 90% of our patients are between 8 and 5 p.m.
All right, thank
Mr.
you.
Chair,
Commissioner Heikler.
is it premature to ask if the builder or the developer will put a wall there? Do you have a problem putting a wall in there,
Privacy fence.
privacy fence?
I don't know if I have a problem with that. I guess I'd be curious as to what the cost would be and how much good it would actually do. Once it's put up, and how tall are we talking? And, I guess at the end of the day, how much good will it do, and will it keep the homeowners truly happy, and will it achieve the goals that they're hoping it will? And my concern is that it won't, and it would just become a burden to us in terms of cost and added material and labor, and it wouldn't look as nice as just having a tree line there either. So I would prefer not to have that wall.
Thank you. Commission, any other questions?
Chair Schwartz, I've got one more. We did talk about lowering the light poles.
Yes.
Is that an option and then
We'd certainly be happy to lower the light
that you could
poles
look
and
at?
I know.
And then that would help
course, the
keep
privacy.
the light down.
privacy guard so it's not hitting onto the homes either.
How many light poles are proposed along there, just in the the parking peninsulas? Right.
I think the number of poles, Commissioner Casey, is often determined by how high they are.
Oh,
The higher up, the fewer you need. So if you put on smaller poles, that reduces the area that's covered consequentially, the spillover. But then you might need a few more
And we'd just be
lights
talking
to
along the
accommodate.
north end, right?
Yeah,
For the shorter ones?
Yeah,
Yeah.
along here.
just along that north
Yeah.
end is
I
the
don't know
only
what
impact.
the break point is and how it balances
The
out.
concern is those two houses, we try to keep the shorter ones within that area so that we don't have spillover lighting at all.
Mr. Chair,
And I got one other question for the applicant,
Yes.
Chair Schwartz. Now, do you typically reduce the lights once the employees and everybody's gone? Are they essentially on a timer? So once people are gone from 8 o'clock on, you have just really scattered security lighting?
We typically just leave them on, it's one of those photo cells, so they come on at dusk and then they're off at sunrise. but we typically keep the lot lit at night just for safety and security purposes, of course, just like most of the adjacent lots to us do now.
All right, and Commissioner Heichel, you have another question?
Just briefly, the situation with the trash pickup. I really can't believe that a trash hauler wouldn't, want to meet your time frame. So I don't know if you ask them to pick up trash at 10 o'clock, why they wouldn't do that rather than 5 a.m.
And we would certainly want to be proactive and ask them. Of course, we can't, if someone did come early, it'd be difficult to be out there managing that on a weekly basis, ensuring they're there after the hours of 8 a.m., but something we'd be happy to request from ACE or Republic, whoever the trash carrier is for this property.
They circulate in our neighborhoods at, early hours. I hear them. So it might be a cost of doing business, that you're gonna have that noise flow.
I mean, it's like, yeah, in front of my house, we have the trash pickup, but it varies depending on who's on the route that week. It's either at 7 a.m. or around 10 a.m., but it ebbs and flows. And
Yeah.
I hear it in my house as well.
Chair Schwartz, another operational question. You know, an idea of how often you'll be having pickups? Frequency?
I would guess once to twice a week. That's fairly common for a commercial property. I believe the one we're in now is probably 2 to 3 times per week. I think the building we're currently in is about twice the size as the one we're in, so they probably produce about twice as much garbage.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And Commission, thoughts, concerns?
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Casey?
Well, I don't like the term wall. To me, that's like one of those concrete products you brought in to kind of stand alone, and 15 feet kind of staggered in my mind. I think that's excessive. I know in our neighborhood, we have, we're back to back with our neighbors, and a tornado, 10 years ago took out a whole row of pine trees. And so what we did was we had plastic, impervious to weather panels brought in and staggered across our lawn on our property, but it served the neighbors too. And in the gap between those panels, and I don't know if they're 6 or 8 feet, they're not square, they're more of a rectangle, but they do occupy quite a bit of space, and they cut the visibility. But in the gap between those panels, we did some planting, put up some evergreen trees or birch trees or something, and it kind of separated us, which is, to me, what the residents are asking for, is a little separation. And lo and behold, these trees grew, like Commissioner Knobloch pointed out. Those trees that are going to be landscaped, planned, are going to grow, and they're going to provide the best buffer. But in the interim, these were panels that we put 3 of them across our yard to kind of, separate us for the time being. Now the plantings have separated us again. And they're nice people. I'm not saying that. Just for visibility and things like that. So something maybe softer than a wall is what I'm getting at. Those plantings might just meet the need.
Mr. Harlicker, the Townhouse Association, or the Homeowners Association, excuse me, they have some trees along their property line as well, correct?
Correct.
So in essence, there's gonna be a double row of trees
Along portions of it, yes, Chair Schwartz.
along majority of the portion of where the 2 homes are.
Yeah, as you can see on the air photo here, those are existing evergreen trees. There's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 of them planted along there.
So with their existing trees and then the row of trees that we're talking about having put on this property, majority of which are the evergreen trees, which are quick growing and will cover a lot of space, is gonna give very good screening, I believe. That I personally, I don't think a privacy fence is gonna add anything more than what those trees are already gonna provide. And at this time, I would not say that a privacy fence is not needed. That's my thought on that issue. If the commission has any other comments on that issue.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Casey?
I would concur with that in the fact that something softer than a wall, and certainly that tree buffer. And as you say, it's going to be a double row in a couple years. They'll be meaningful size. I would concur with that I think that can be the best buffer rather than, I don't want to say wall, than a privacy fence, I guess. And at the same time, address the shorter light poles. If we could look at that across that north side, that would maybe, and to be sure they're not directed at the townhomes. To keep that private, that would be another thing that I guess I'd add to a condition to at least explore that before I do.
Mr. Harlicker, we need to make a condition for the shorter light poles?
Yeah, Chair Schwartz, I would make it a condition.
What are we talking now, the currently planned are what, 15 feet? Is that what you stated, or?
Standard size.
Standard size is 15.
Oftentimes, we'd be providing a photometric plan to the city so that they can review that and approve that, which I think would still cover us under what we're trying to achieve here.
So just maybe make a condition that petitioners work with your planning department on height of poles in the area of the existing, the homes to the north. Shorter poles in that area.
That's kind of puts staff in a difficult position. If you could give us a little more direction than just shorter poles.
Well, but at this point, we don't know the height of the existing poles, so to say that we want X height poles without knowing what the current poles would be, it's kind of difficult for us as well.
Yeah, I understand that.
Could we say something like to make sure that the lights are not, like it's stated in here that it's angled away from the homes.
Right.
And screened.
And it's screened, but just to make sure that it's not going to be shining right into someone's bedroom window.
Yeah.
Regardless of the height.
Right, regardless of the height, but to
Right.
make sure
That's
that,
already covered by code, though.
right, that's what I'm
Correct.
saying, but just to really emphasize that it's,
Chair Schwartz and Commissioners, 15 feet high for parking lot lights is lower than what typically you're getting poles, if you go down at some of the office buildings, they're 20 feet high. So 15 feet is
15 feet or
shorter
less.
than a lot of parking lots lights. So if
Maybe-
you want to put a limit,
like
at-
no
at
higher than
15
15,
feet.
or no higher.
Chair Schwartz.
Commissioner Heikler, or Knobloch, excuse me.
Not like that. To Mr. Hardlicker, to your knowledge, is there a minimum and a maximum height requirement for lighting in the city of Coon Rapids?
No, there isn't. Lighting is regulated by, foot candles, parking lots and entrances to buildings have to have a minimum foot candle. That can be accomplished a number of ways. You could have taller lights or additional lower lights. Around entrances, a lot of time, that's why you see the lighted bollards to provide the light around the buildings without having to have to put them on poles. So there's different ways of accomplishing that. I think along this north property line, 15-foot light poles, from the ground up, so from the ground, measured from the ground to the arm of the light pole, 15 feet is lower than I think average.
So
If you look at the houses, the eaves on the houses are what, 10 feet from ground up maybe? So that'll give you kind of a perspective as to how high it will be, and the arms will be extending out over the parking lot, and then they'll have shields behind them to direct the light down and onto the parking lot.
Yeah, because condition 8 already talks about shields
Right.
and cutoffs.
Yeah,
So, Mr. Arliker, so in general, the average, would you say the average height is around 15 feet is the commercial standard?
I think it's taller than that.
It is,
Yeah.
okay. And my last question is, in regards to the commercial offices around to the south, do you have a general inkling as to what the height of their lighting systems are? Light poles?
Commissioner Knobloch, I do not.
Okay.
So, Mr. Harlicker, would you say, putting a condition of, say, maximum height of 15-foot light poles on the eastern half of the north property line would cover what we're trying to accomplish?
I think that's pretty close, because you're focusing on the area.
Where the houses are.
The northern.
Yeah, Jason, you're
boundary.
looking at this area here. So I would say that's probably the east half of that north property line.
So light poles,
Would that be just included in that one, or is that gonna be a separate one?
Is that condition 13?
light poles with a maximum height of 15 feet
Ordinance.
from the ground. On the eastern half of north property line.
You're adding that as a separate condition,
Yeah, number 13.
unless it doesn't meet the foot candles requirement. I don't know. I'm
He
clueless
said that-
when it
he
comes
said
to
that they could
foot
add
candles.
more. You can always add more.
They can
light.
have more poles if they need more light,
Right.
Yeah.
but the maximum height is gonna be at 15 feet.
Chair Schwartz,
Yes, sir.
I have a suggestion. If your goal is to have it along the residential property on the northeast corner,
Yes, sir.
we could always figure out if the plat number or whatever the legal description is for that property, and say along that property, and have that requirement. More specificity in that way, it's in there.
Whichever way you think would be best. We basically just need to cover the eastern half of this site to where those houses are located.
Right. Well, you could simply just say alongside the residential property then.
Residential property, yeah.
To be determined, maybe, for the, waiting for the legal description of it.
Chair
It would
Schwartz.
be-
Commissioner Knobloch.
Question for Mr. Harlicker. On the northern boundary to the northwest, is that, yes, is that a garage
I believe, Commissioner Knobloch, I believe that's the garage
for the
here,
other
and then
property?
here, and the units are
Okay,
in the center area right here.
thank you.
Commissioner Schwartz.
Commissioner Stevens?
I was also looking at the landscaping, you know, where we're just talking about the spruce trees. But there's also, all of those burning bushes, right, are in front of that, right? Aren't those all little teeny dwarf,
Along,
right in front of it?
Here?
What are all those circles?
yeah, those are our lower,
So that's also like will help, you know, like when the maples grow higher, or the, is that what maples, yeah.
Yeah,
You know, I mean,
commissioners-
it'll be at least some of that, yeah. So it'll be
Yeah.
kind of blocking a little bit of
there'll
their.
be low-growing shrubs along there.
Right, but with the trees in between the taller tree, or the maples, with their fencing, that will also help with some of the sound in between also,
Yeah.
as they get larger.
All right, Commission, anything else I think we need to cover? As far as the findings for flexibility, I have no problems with the 3 conditions as listed by staff.
No.
I totally agree with all 3 of them.
Well, this property's been vacant for years, or forever, whatever, so it's good to see something finally wanting to go in there. So that's great. It's a
Something
nice looking
attractive.
building. Very nice looking
Yeah,
building.
nice looking building.
Anyone wishing to make a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Casey?
my suggestion is, you wrote the last condition, could you make the motion? Or you have it written
No,
out?
he can't. He can add to it.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll make a motion then, I'll start the process. In planning case 18-7, I move that the planning commission recommend approval of a site plan with design flexibility with the conditions and the findings for granting flexibility listed below. And there are 12 conditions listed, and we were going to add a 13th. And then the findings for design flexibility to be incorporated in that motion. Do you want to chime in on the number 13?
Well, 13, I think we agreed was light poles with a maximum height of 15 feet from the ground, and then the legal description that'll be provided. That will basically cover the eastern half of the property line.
Second.
Motion by Casey, second by Stevens. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. It's a recommendation by the Planning Commission with a decision by the City Council at their June 15th meeting. Thank you, and good luck. And Mr. Harlicker, excuse me, next case is Planning Case 17-7, revocation of a conditional use permit for self-storage facility with outdoor storage at 11490 Exeon. Dwight Larson, Mr. Harlicker.
Yeah, Chair Schwartz and Commissioners. On April 20th, 2017, the Commission approved the site plan and conditional use permit for a self-storage facility with outdoor storage. That project never underwent construction. The applicant has notified the city that they did not close on the property and they will not be moving forward on the project. Site plans are valid for 1 year following the date of approval. The applicant did not request an extension, therefore the site plan approval expired on April 20th, 2018. No formal action is required. Conditional use permits are also valid for 1 year from the date of approval. Conditional use permits require a formal action revoking that conditional use permit. And that's what the commission is being asked to do tonight, is to revoke the conditional use permit for this site plan for self-storage facility with outdoor storage. And staff is recommending that the planning commission move to revoke the conditional use permit.
Thank you, Mr. Eliker. Commission, any questions?
I have a, Chair Schwartz.
Commissioner Knobloch?
I have a question for Mr. Erlicher. Clarification. Is this the that was last year that didn't have interest in doing a curb or?
No.
That was something else? Okay, thank you. That's it.
All right, we need to have a public hearing in this matter, so I'll open a public hearing in planning case 17-7, revocation of a conditional use permit for self-storage facility with outdoor storage at 11490 Exeon. Anyone wish to speak to this matter? Seeing no one, close public hearing. Commission.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Heikla.
in planning case 17-7, I move the planning commission move to revoke the conditional use permit for a self-storage facility with outdoor storage based on the finding that the applicant has not commenced work upon the property within 1 year. Excuse me.
Motion by Heikla, second by Casey. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. This is a decision by the planning commission and can be appealed to the city council within 10 days if anyone so chooses. Our next case, planning case 18-8, amend Village 10 final PUD, planned unit development at 2022 to 2170 Northdale Boulevard. The Wilkes Architects, Mr. Harlicker.
Yeah, Chair Schwartz and Commissioners. The applicant is requesting an amendment to the PUD to add an additional ground sign along Northdale Boulevard, increase the height of an existing ground sign located down near the intersection of 115th and Hanson, and add outdoor seating patio and modify the exterior of the existing building. The area that the applicant is working on is the east end of Building B. That area is currently occupied by AAA, if people are familiar with that area. And AAA will be moving down to the west end of the building, and their space will be occupied by Chipotle. Current configuration of this PUD, a little background information, was approved in 2002, and that was to construct the Cub grocery store. The permitted and conditional uses allowed in this PUD are the same that are allowed in the community commercial district. And here's the site plan. First, I'd like to go over adding a second monument sign along Northdale Boulevard. Currently, there's an existing monument sign at the signalized intersection, this location here. They're proposing to add a second sign, I believe it's right in here, and it will look like this. The existing sign is set back 19 feet from Northdale Boulevard and is 16 feet high. The center has over 1,100 square feet of frontage along Northdale Boulevard. The new sign will be about 250 feet south of the existing sign. It will also be set back 19 feet from Northdale Boulevard. It'll be 12 feet high. The sign is illustrated here. It'll consist of 2 panels, Chipotle, and I think for reference, they show Lifetime Fitness. That lower space there will be up to, the property owners and tenants to figure out who goes in there. But that is the second sign that's being proposed along Northdale Boulevard. Kind of for comparison purposes, if this was just a regular community commercial zoning, they would be allowed, shopping centers are 15 acres or larger, can have 2 ground signs per arterial street, which is what Northdale Boulevard is, and they could be up to 300 square feet in size. So they're well within the traditional sign standards for community commercial. However, since this is a PUD, there are limitations for the signage. The original package was approved as part of the PUD original approval. That's why they're coming back before the commission and ultimately the city council, because they want to modify the sign standards of that PUD. The applicant is requesting that the new sign, the location of the new sign is such that customers can recognize that Chipotle is in the center, and they have time from here up to the intersection to make whatever lane changes they need to do in order to get into the center. The second proposed change is this sign here. It's illustrated here. There's an existing sign down at the corner, right in here of Hanson and 115th. Sign is currently 11 feet 9 inches high, 8 feet wide. They are proposing to add a 96-inch by 31-inch panel. The additional panel will increase the sign's height to 14 feet 6 inches. They're not adding a new sign, they're just adding a panel to the base of the existing sign. So the sign's location is not changing. However, it will be a couple feet higher because of the new panel that's going in there. The other modification that's being proposed is an outdoor patio area consisting of 16 seats. And if you recall back on the air photo of the location map, this building here was highlighted in red. Chipotle is going into this end cap here. What they would like to do is put an outdoor seating area in front. The patio will involve taking the existing peninsula here and incorporating 1 parking space into that patio area. Here's a more close-up of the patio plan. 16 seats with a fence that'll be installed and designed by Chipotle. There are building code requirements, that require somehow control access to here, and they're proposing with a fence. There'll be a light pole at this location here. So this is the configuration. There is sufficient parking in this area of the center. If you go back, which is this area here. Current mix of tenant requires 81 spaces. There's a total of 171 spaces in the area surrounding Building B. So there should be sufficient parking to accommodate the additional seating that the additional parking that the patio space will require. Fourth modification is changes to the exterior of the building. What's being proposed is a white ephes right in here, and then modifications to the existing canopy as well as the storefront. They'll take the existing storefront and wrap it around the building, modify it with a kind of a charcoal, dark gray aluminum material. The canopy here will be painted, so the darker materials here, the charcoal gray and the black will blend together. And then this area here will be ephes. The storefront extends about halfway down. You can see this. This is the elevation that faces Northdale Boulevard. The area that's not included in the storefront will be a white ephes. They're including a recessed area here to give some relief to that side of the building. The signage as shown on here is for reference only. Again, they'll have to come in for a separate sign permit. Here's more of a close-up of the proposed exterior of the building with the canopy, the charcoal storefront, and the white's ephes. And then this ephes band here, they're calling it, it's a dark gray material between the storefront and the white ephes up above. And with that, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the proposed modifications with the condition that the 200 square feet around the base of the new sign on Northdale Boulevard be landscaped with shrubs and/or perennials.
Thank you, Mr. Harlicker. Commissioner, any questions? Mr. Harlicker?
Is that patio area, Mr. Schwartz, is that patio area only accessible from the interior of the building?
It, from the interior, no, they'll have to come out through the main entrance and then get to the seating area, similar to what we do. I don't know if you're familiar with Panera Bread.
Okay, it kind of looked like it was closed off and it was just kind of,
Yeah. This is the main entrance here. And you've got the sidewalk out front and then the seating area.
oh, I see, it's farther away, all right.
Any other questions? Petitioner present, wish to make any presentation?
Hello again. Kevin Green from Wilkes Architects. I do have some samples on the proposed finish changes to the exterior, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have on the proposal.
I think it looks nice.
If you want to bring the samples up.
Yes, sure.
So the smaller sample here is the proposed aluminum, as well as the complementing color for the eaves on the white as well.
Then I have a question for you, Mr. Hardiker, if you could pull back up the front of the building. Yeah, that one and then the one before that, but this one,
This is a close-up of this illustration here.
but the actual building will be, or the actual front will be the drawing to the right with the two sets of doors.
Yes, this is the front here, and it corresponds to
So there will
this
be another,
elevation
there'll be
here.
another set of doors then at the area where your cursor is.
Yeah,
Yep.
we usually do.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Double doors
All right. That was my,
on the right side and then a single door on the left? Is that for public use too,
Yeah.
one's an entrance and
An
one's an
exit.
exit probably.
for the one?
At least that's the one.
I can answer that.
Yes,
So
sir.
we'll have a double pair of doors for the main entry, and then required by building code, we need a main secondary point of exit, since our occupant load will be higher than 49. So that'll be our designated emergency exit.
So that'd be an emergency exit only?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Casey?
and can you clarify for me, so that fence surrounding the patio area, there is no gate in that, right? The access is in and out the main door,
Uh,
double door.
The fence will not be attached to the building, so you can enter it from basically the main
From the
entry.
sidewalk.
Or if you come out our designated exit, you can make your way over to the patio from there.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions, Commission petitioner? All right, thank you at this time. Open a public hearing in planning case 18-8 to amend the Village 10 final planned unit development, 2022 to 2170 Northdale Boulevard, Wilkus Architects. Anyone present wish to speak, public hearing? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing.
In planning case 18-8, I recommend the planning commission move to approve the proposed modifications to Village 10 PUD with the following condition: that the 200 square feet around the base of the sign must be landscaped with shrubs and/or perennials.
Second that?
Motion by Stevens, second by Knobloch. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries.
Nice job.
This is a recommendation by the planning commission to the city council and will be heard by the city council at their June 5th meeting.
All right, see you.
Good luck.
Thanks so much. Good job.
And our last case for the evening is planning case 17-12, Sherman Associates, a site plan approval extension for Riverdale Station Apartments. Mr. Harlicker.
Chair Schwartz and Commissioners, Sherman Associates is asking for a one-year extension to their site plan approval to June 15th, 2009. June 15th of last year, they received site plan approval for the two apartment buildings, 180-unit building and a 70-unit buildings. The applicant is currently working through the financing of the project and anticipate construction either the first part of next year or late fall of this year. So that's why they are requesting one-year extension of their site plan approval. And staff is recommending that the commission move to recommend approval of a one-year extension of their site plan approval.
Thank you, Mr. Harlicker. Any questions?
And did you say that would extend to June 15th, 2019?
Correct.
Okay.
And Commissioner Casey and Chair Schwartz, what that means is they have to start construction. They don't have to have the project completed. They just have to have pulled building permits and started construction.
Yep. All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, so instead of anything happening this year, this summer, it would...
Possibly. They are still working on their federal financing. They're due to close, I think, early summer. So they haven't set a hard deadline yet as to when they'll be starting construction.
It's not exciting to me that, they're gonna have the potential to go for another full year before they break ground there then. And that's the case, right? They have a full year beyond what we...
Technically, they do have a full year, Commissioner Heikkila, yep.
That maybe isn't their intent either.
Right.
They'd like to get started too.
Yeah, I'm sure the Sherman Associates would like to get started on this as soon as possible. It's in their best interest to start construction also. But they're going through a fairly technical procedure as far as getting funding for the project, and they're moving forward through that process now.
All right, Commission, anyone wish to make a motion?
Chair Schwartz.
Commissioner Knobloch.
In planning case 17-12, the planning commission moved to recommend approval of a one-year extension of the site plan approval.
Second.
Motion by Knobloch, second by Stevens. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So the recommendation by the planning commission and decision by the city council at their June 5th meeting. Other business, Mr. Harlicker, anything,
As you can see, a couple of you commented how the retail buildings in front of Home Depot are coming along. I talked to the building department this morning, and the Honda dealership has started to get their foundation set for the building, so they're moving along on their site. Chrysler building, same thing, they're also moving along. Walser and the Nissan dealership, we're still waiting on them. They will be asking for, they'll be on the agenda next month for a one-year extension of their site plan approval. And I know Sportsman's Warehouse is moving along with their modifications to the old Sports Authority space next to the Home Depot there, that end of the shopping center. And that's it.
all right, thank you.
I have a question for Mr. Harder.
Commissioner Knobloch.
Status on Canes on like,
They're working on the property.
Going along.
yeah?
Yeah, they've
Okay.
demoed it, they've got their building, I think their building permit has been issued.
Okay.
Yeah, there's been work on the property up there.
Yeah, I saw them, I know they have approval and they're working on it, just how it's coming. I'm hungry, tired of driving to Blaine.
Commission, anyone else have anything? Motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Second. Third.
Motion to Stevens, second Casey. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Meeting's adjourned.